We have seen a lot of announcements over the last couple of years from the big players, and largely I see those announcements as really good because traditionally deliverability has been this black box and we're left really guessing, and that was intentional, right? Because they didn't want to give bad actors any insights into what would help them get into the inbox, where these major players, Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft have come forward and said, look, here are some things that we want to see, and like they were very explicit about it. They wanted to see spam complaints under certain thresholds. I hope everyone recognizes that when all three of those players said that you had to implement DMARC with a P equals none policy, that is the weakest policy. And really, most of our clients are already at P equals reject. P equals quarantine is sort of that middle step, so none, quarantine, and reject. But our clients are already there at like the strictest policy. That's where we're headed towards in the years ahead. And that's good because DMARC, makes it very, very hard for your brand to be spoofed. Being able to trust the messages that you're getting are actually from the people and brands that they're reportedly from. That's super important.
Today we have Chad White from... During this session, we will be covering multiple topics around deliverability, email marketing, and strategy. But before I move forward, I would love to have a quick intro of our speaker. If you are already part of an email marketing domain, and if email is still important, a channel for you as a brand and as an email marketer, but you are also worried about that being underperforming for quite some time, this conversion is going to reset how you think about strategy, personalization, and performance. In today's session, the guest we have is Chad White, Head of Research at Oracle Digital Experience Agency and author of Email Marketing Rules. He has spent 2 decades researching what makes email land, convert, and stay relevant across platforms like Salesforce, Litmus, ExactTarget, which now being termed as Marketing Cloud Engagement. From deliverability pitfalls to smarter automation, Chad brings the clarity and tactical framework leaders need right now, be it a marketer, be it brand owner. Stick around because this session is packed with insights and you will want to take straight to your next campaign review when you're drafting your campaign calendar or sending any next campaign. So welcome, Chad. Great to have you on this session.
Thank you for having me, Chintan.
Perfect. So before I move towards email marketing and then strategy, which are common pointers in terms of discussion, right? I would love to start with the major challenge, right? Which majority of the brand marketers, email marketers, lifecycle marketers or brand owners faces reaching into the inbox, because nowadays inbox is crowded, right? Of your subscribers, inbox is crowded. There's a fierce competition. There's always a challenge on how to make sure that your emails actually land into the inbox, right? Rather than landing into spam and other areas. So a lot of teams are seeing their email metrics drop, right? And their default reaction or concern would be to blame content or the timing when they send an email. But the real issue might be something else, right? They might not be even looking into. You have covered how Gmail, Yahoo, and now Microsoft have raised their bar in terms of deliverability, right? With things like DMARC, one click unsubscribe and more. So for people or brands who are struggling with getting good metrics or email metrics, right? Or seeing a deep into the email metrics, what's your checklist for diagnosing and fixing the deliverability issues they are facing right now?
Yeah, so we have seen a lot of announcements over the last couple of years from the big players. And largely, I see those announcements as really good because traditionally deliverability has been this black box and we're left really guessing. And that was intentional, right? Because they didn't want to give bad actors any insights into what would help them get into the inbox. And so really deliverability experts were like, the shamans of deliverability. They really spent all their time, deep in the trenches and really kind of, reading the tea leaves and trying to figure out exactly how things work. And so these announcements have been really good where these major players, Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft have come forward and said, look, here are some things that we want to see. And like they were very explicit about it, which was, I think, really fantastic. It was a lot less guesswork on our part. And for really for the most part, these announcements really just codified what were already best practices. I thought maybe there might be some surprises in there. You never know today. I feel like Apple is always throwing us surprise announcements, but the announcements from Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft really weren't big surprises. They wanted to see spam complaints under certain thresholds. Our clients didn't have any problems meeting those thresholds. They wanted to see DMARC implementation. Our clients already on DMARC, and they were pretty kind. I hope everyone recognizes that when all three of those players, Google, Yahoo, and Microsoft, said that you had to implement DMARC with a P equals none policy, that is the weakest policy. That's like the starter policy. So you can just start getting DMARC records and reports and understanding more like maybe where you've lost control of your reputation that allow you to kind of see where there might be some rogue sending going on inside of your organization. Maybe you have salespeople who have spun up their own MailChimp accounts and are sending, using your reputation, but not sanctioned emails, not using the right templates or messaging. DMARC is really great for giving you visibility into all of the places where people are sending using your name and your email addresses, so like that's just a starter. It is absolutely going to be a more restrictive policy in the future. Not sure how much time they're going to give us to make that transition, but everybody should be absolutely expecting that. And really, most of our clients are already at P equals reject. P equals quarantine is sort of that middle step, so be none, quarantine, and reject. But our clients are already there at like the strictest policy. That's where we're headed towards in the years ahead. So this is really kind of a again, like a very kind sort of ramp that they've given us for people who aren't already using DMARC. So, and that's good because DMARC, makes it very, very hard for your brand to be spoofed. That's very good news. And certainly as we're we're getting deeper into the age of AI, being able to trust the messages that you're getting are actually from the people and brands that they're purportedly from, that's super important. So I saw all of these changes as really positive, and frankly, none of them really earth-shattering. Now, if you want to talk about how do you guarantee or how do you, ensure that the vast majority of your messages make it to the inbox, I think really all of that is still mostly about engagement management. Making sure that you're sending messages that people actually not only want to get, but then engage with. And that really has been the name of the game for like the past decade. And that I don't see that as really changing anytime soon, despite all of these announcements that don't really talk about engagement. They're trying to like kind of nail down like the nuts and bolts of identity and making sure that people aren't being malicious. But for legitimate senders, the name of the game, once you tick off all those boxes, is still having good, strong engagement. That's doing things like using personalization, doing good segmentation, having strong automation in place so that you are triggering messages to folks at those critical moments when they're most engaged and need the most help. That is all really great. And those ensure that you have really relevant messages that people are opening and clicking and engaging with. So all that's super important. And on the flip side of that, which is definitely something that a lot of our clients have been focusing more on in recent years, is being way more responsive to inactivity. So when you see some of your subscribers really not opening and not clicking for a protracted period of time, that's a cue that like maybe they're just not in the market right now, maybe their needs are changing, and that is a good opportunity for you to scale back on how frequently you're mailing them. And in the eyes of inbox providers, that makes your, the body of everything that you're sending look better. Your engagement rates go up because you're sending fewer messages to people who are less engaged, and sending lots of messages to people who aren't engaging, that drags all of your engagement metrics down. So those are really sort of the two levers that we have, is like sending smarter, more relevant messages that increases engagement, and sending fewer messages to people who are less engaged. So that is all really, really good. Going back to the announcements from Google and Yahoo versus Microsoft, I would say that I was kind of disappointed that in Microsoft's announcement, all they did was announce support for DMARC, whereas Yahoo and Google, they required DMARC, but also list unsubscribe, also set thresholds for spam complaints. They did a lot more, and all that was really good. And there was all these rumors, for like the 2 years in between these two announcements that Microsoft was going to like join on board with Yahoo and Google, what they announced, and I thought that would be really amazing. So I was really disappointed that Microsoft, all they did was codify DMARC, and they didn't really sign on to any of the other things that Yahoo and Google had put forward, which I thought was a real shame. And the other announcements that Microsoft made were sort of recommendations, were largely things that people should be doing already. So not really a whole lot there for legitimate senders. Like, even like some of it was sort of like reinforcing what was in CAN spam, which is pretty weak. The requirements in CAN spam are very, very weak. So I'm hoping that Microsoft comes back here pretty soon and signs on to more of these standards, because I think the more that things are unified across inboxes, the more that expectations are set, uniformly, that makes it easier for the legitimate senders to do the right things, right? If we understand what the rules are, it makes it easier for us to follow them. So in general, though, these announcements have been pretty amazing because it's very, very unusual for inbox providers to do anything that's the same, right? They all have traditionally had their own rules on deliverability, on rendering, and everything else. And so it is really nice to see, at least in the realm of deliverability, a little bit of convergence where they're agreeing and having uniform standards, at least, to a degree. So that's all been like really positive developments. But for the most part, it doesn't change the fact that engagement really is the key to getting consistent inbox placement at a high level.
So yeah, great insights in terms of making sure that these announcements are going to help the brand marketers, right, and are not going to disappoint them, right? It's just that about having a new or an extra layer is always confusing. They need to also follow this best practices now, being part of that DMARC policy. One other area, and when you're talking about engagement, right, which is a key for marketers to assess the state of their account, right, which they're managing. There are accounts where there is a low engagement, and that is majorly connected with the data problem, right? Not specific to a content. So marketers are pouring energy into subject lines, crafting subject lines, having personalizations, right? Adding rich visuals, right? But let's say if the data is stale or misaligned, right? The best design email in the world won't work, right? Because email only work when the data is accurate and working. So you have been writing about list hygiene and subscriber fatigue for years. So what would be your practical approach to keeping a healthy list? And what's that one mistake you see the marketers or teams make that tanks their engagement on a long-term period?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're right that if you don't have good underlying data, it does make it very challenging to do these things. And in many ways today, like good email strategy creates good deliverability. So if you have that good, strong connection with the data and you're using it to personalize and segment and automate, along with that inactivity management, like generally, like that's really the key. And the data is tricky. We talk about us being in the age of AI, but we're also in the age of privacy. And certainly Apple's MPP has made it very difficult for us to understand whether or not people are engaging with our messages from that highest level of, are they looking at the message? And that's really tricky. However, we still recommend that brands absolutely be monitoring opens. Hopefully your email service provider gives you the ability to differentiate between verifiable opens and auto opens. That's a really important distinction that you should have clear in your reporting. Of course, clicks have also, those are great. I mean, bots are undermining those a little bit for sure. And some brands have more bot activity than others, but clicks and opens still very, very valuable. Very, very important to look at both of those as signs of engagement, and to pay attention to what people are opening, what they're responding to, what are they clicking on, and using those signals. Again, you talk about good data fueling good strategy, which fuels good deliverability. Those are your best signs. Of course, you can do other things. You can have them, select preferences in a preference center. You can do surveys and polls and other kinds of, more explicit asking of questions to get a good read, but certainly paying attention to what they're opening, what they're clicking on. Those give you signs of interest that you should be turning around and using for personalization, segmentation, and automation efforts. So is it perfect? No, it's not perfect. But across, your email marketing program, across all of those signals that you're getting, it is still way better than just sending generic content and hoping for the best. I think sometimes we get into this mindset, as like trying to be data-driven marketers, that we think that things have to be perfect in order for us to act. And I think we have to recognize that, a lot of our metrics are imperfect, but they're infinitely better than not using those imperfect metrics. So, you have to kind of like get over that. We are definitely, in the age of, being data-driven and insight-driven, but are those going to be perfect signals? Are we going to get it right every single time? Absolutely not. But on net, that is absolutely the way to go, right? You're going to be doing way better than not using those signals, and smartly. So, the engagement side of things is really, really important. I would recommend that when people are, we're kind of trying to connect all this to deliverability, there's sort of two things I really recommend that folks do if they're not already doing that. Will give them much greater insights into what's happening in terms of engagement and deliverability and the connection there. And the first thing is to look at your subscribers by domain, by mailbox provider. The folks who are signed up via Gmail, Yahoo, Outlook.com, different business providers, looking at those buckets will really help you understand whether or not maybe there's a problem at a particular mailbox provider. Because again, deliverability is different across all of these different providers, and especially for a mailbox provider that's maybe not strongly represented among your subscribers, you could have a serious problem there that might be hiding in the average across all of your subscribers. So looking at it by domain is really important. The other thing that I think is easily just as important, and perhaps even more important, is looking at your subscribers per acquisition source. So tagging them by the way that they come onto your list. Are they signing up on your homepage? Are they signing up via a lead generation form? Are they signing up during checkout? Are they signing up at a live event? Are they signing up as part of a webinar? Wherever they're coming onto your list from, tracking those acquisition sources can be really powerful, especially if they're signing up through a partner or something that's a little bit fringy. Making sure you're paying attention and looking at and tagging those sources so you can see, hey, was this a good way to acquire new subscribers or not? Chances are, if you're having deliverability problems, or if you're getting kind of borderline, the chances are very, very good that most of your problematic subscribers where you're seeing low engagement or higher spam complaints are probably coming from one or two acquisition sources. And so if you don't have those tagged, you're not going to be able to see what's happening, and you won't be able to make good choices about, hey, where do I put my time and attention in terms of acquisition sources to grow my list in a quality way. So that's a couple of ways I would recommend sort of, dividing up your audience to look at them to make sure that you understand what's really going on, because it really so often is that there's a relatively small group of subscribers that are really dragging down your overall program engagement levels.
So to summarize what you mentioned for the data part, it's good that they should focus on the list hygiene, right? Making sure that they try to see the audience or data by mailbox provider, by domain, right? Just to see that from where they are or what type of users they are getting. And then the most important part is the sign up source, right? Whether that has been generated from website, landing page, lead generation form, or from social, right? Because there are people who are also leveraging the social as a channel to acquire audience. So good
Absolutely.
insight on that part. When we are talking about the engagement, when we are talking about the data, right? One other area which we normally miss out, right, is about fixing those broken journeys and outdated strategies, right? And especially in B2B, right? Buyer normally bounces between the stages, right? Channels and influences. Yet most nurture emails still assume a straight path, right? Rather than just following the traits of the buyer. You're talked about creating adaptive journeys, right? That meet people's where they are, right? And would love to understand how can a marketing team evolve from static drips, right, to something more responsive and effective, even if they don't have a giant tech stack, right, in terms of marketing automation platform.
Yeah, no, prospects and consumers definitely make it hard on us, right? Like today they use lots of different channels and they tend to switch between them, pretty quickly. And, I think on average, I think at least here in the US, like the average, journey, from like awareness to actually converting on average involves like 5 or 6 different touch points, so different channels, and that's a real challenge to stitch all of that insights together. Certainly, we've seen a lot of interest in recent years into customer data platforms, so CDPs. Even more interest in Europe and some other places than the US. Like the US is not always ahead on CDPs. I think the laws in the EU, the more strict laws, have definitely encouraged brands to invest more in CDPs and to get more of that 360-degree view of their customers and understand, that whole picture of what their customers are doing across all the different touch points that a brand has and putting that all together in one place. And frankly, I don't know how you do a good job of orchestrating across channels if you don't have a CDP or something that's essentially the equivalent. I really see CDPs as sort of foundational to the future of not only email marketing, but just marketing, digital marketing in general. I think that's one of the foundational pieces. And I guess as a quick tangent, I see there being like 3 interconnected pieces. One is the CDP that gives you all that centralized data about your customer. The next is analytics. Our analytics are really behind the times. They're very channel focused, campaign focused. That's not how we're going to win in the future. They have to be much more organized around our customer and our consumer. So it need to be customer centric metrics, things like customer lifetime value, not channels. And that'll give us the insights that we really need to understand how all these channels are working together. So often today it's like, oh, email versus SMS and SMS versus push, and that's all blah, blah, blah. All these channels work together to create a brand experience. It's not one channel versus the other. It's all of them working together to create an experience for our customers. So better analytics, customer-focused analytics is really key. And then that third bit is orchestration across channels, so omni-channel orchestration. So it's really those 3 things are really, I think, the foundational. Like brands don't have that 5 years from now, I think are going to be in big trouble, especially in the enterprise market where things are moving quickly. Those are really necessities. So I know I went on a bit of a tangent. But let's get back to the original question. So there definitely are steps in between. Again, I think I've painted a picture of like what the future looks like. I think sometimes, again, we get in this all or nothing mindset where we think, well, if we can't do it perfectly, then we shouldn't do it at all. Or I think it's why there's so much interest around generative AI They think that we'll kind of leapfrog, deep into the future where, hey, we haven't been able to like totally personalize our messaging. Instead, we'll just have generative AI like write the whole thing. I think that's a pretty big leap for most brands, and frankly, the tech really isn't there yet for us to be able to do that in a way that's consistent and good for our brands. I mean, there are lots of other sort of intermediate steps. Again, I think sort of the data side of it is really crucial to the best that you can do it using, personalization in these drip campaigns, setting up a variety of triggers. We think about triggers as being kind of blunt instruments where you set them off and then they just kind of go for a series, but there's opportunities and a lot of flexibility with a lot of these triggers to set sort of like intermediate triggers where flows get turned off or they shift gears, they drop you into a different flow. It's not super complicated to do. Also kind of understanding the degree of intent and therefore like how much you should chase certain signals, right? Every signal is not black and white. If someone goes to your website and browses a product category for a little bit of time and then goes away, is that a signal? Absolutely. Is that a strong signal? Not really. But it might be worthy of, pursuing lightly, like, to see if you do send a triggered campaign, hey, do they engage with that? And if they do, then that's maybe a signal that you're on the right track. But if someone goes to a product category and browses multiple products or services and watches a video, all right, well, that's a stronger signal. Now, something is probably going on there. They're spending much more time. They're really looking around. They're watching the video. It's definitely a signal of high intent. All right, now that's worthy of something more. And if they were to then also like sign up for a webinar like on that same topic in that same area, that's an even stronger signal. So like paying attention to like the signal strength and responding appropriately. And the same way that like if you're a retailer and someone puts a $25 item in their shopping cart and they abandon it, all right, that's worth something. But that's a very different scenario if that same customer were to put $1,000 worth of merchandise in their cart and walk away, right? Those are different scenarios worthy of different responses. And so that is one way that you can match these, somewhat static nurtures to be more dynamic and to be more responsive to what people are actually doing. You can really dial into these sort of signal strength issues. And also, in those subsequent nurtures, also using personalization to give people an opportunity to indicate greater interest. So having a mix of sort of like low commitment and high commitment CTAs. So low commitment CTA would be maybe they're just interested in like reading a little bit about an issue that's like tangentially related to a product versus wanting to get a demo or read product specs or something like that, which would be a high commitment CTA. So giving a mix of these high and low commitment CTAs is another way to learn, hey, where is this prospect? Where is this customer in the funnel? How interested really are they? And then using those signals to then tailor the next message in your nurture. So those are all I think very doable ways that people can make their nurtures smarter and less static, as we transition, to a world where we're using data in way more sophisticated ways.
Yep. So a fair point, right? It's about making sure that you convert your static drips by learning what the subscribers or the users are doing on the website, on the email, customize it, right, based on their activity, and also making sure that you try, if you are on a tech stack where you are able to scale up to omni-channel, right, or multi-channel, right, try to leverage SMS, in-app push along with email, right, which can give you an enhanced version of the drip or the workflow, right, which you can leverage. But yeah.
So if I could jump in there real quick. So yeah, there's lots of people who are making better use of SMS and push, and that's fantastic. Yep. And you mentioned at the top of our conversation that that some brands are seeing their email programs not perform like as well as maybe they have in the past. One of the reasons for that is because of lots of brands doing the very smart thing of adding SMS and push into their mix. Those, to a degree, are naturally going to take some attribution away from email marketing, which is the incumbent. And it doesn't necessarily mean that your email marketing is less effective. It just means that attribution is getting trickier. And that's what I was talking earlier before about how it's not really one channel versus the other. And you can't really view these channels as all like fighting for budget or, again, one channel versus the other. You have to look at them holistically. What kind of experience are they creating together, right? Are these email messages then priming people to respond via and engage via SMS and push, and vice versa, right? They all kind of work together. But I think it's not a shock that some email programs that have been heavily leaning into SMS and push are seeing their email programs decline a little bit in terms of those sort of channel performance metrics. That makes perfect sense. I don't know why you would expect anything other than that, but that's not a sign that email is becoming weaker. It's just a sign that you've added channels to the mix, and chances are your ability to understand the impact of all of those channels working together, because a lot of subscribers now are opted in to multiple channels. It's not like people are unsubscribing from email and becoming push subscribers and nothing else. In a lot of cases, you have folks on push and SNS that are either opted into both of those or also opted into email as sort of the original digital marketing channel. And across a bunch of our clients, we're seeing quite a significant percentage of subscribers being opted into multiple channels. And we're seeing that those folks are incredibly valuable. They are way more engaged and worth way more than folks who are opted into just one channel. So I think there's a lot of sort of understanding, a lot of analytical work that needs to happen. Attribution models are, in my opinion, pretty rusty and elementary at this point. You need to get away from first and last click and have much more of a sophisticated attribution model that, even if it's not perfect, recognizes that all of these channels are working together on an increasing basis. So it's definitely complicated, but that's where we're headed. Again, we can't be viewing these channels as in competition with each other. It's cooperative.
No, I'm aligned with your point or that it's a cooperative way of working right amongst the channel, and that's what we are also seeing with our clients, where they are leveraging and having audience across the channels, and they are making sure that email, SMS, in and push, they are leveraging it, but not as a competition, trying to see who has made the direct impact and who has given an assisted conversion, right? So the way you mentioned that SMS would be having a larger chunk in terms of the conversion, but that doesn't mean that email program are not working. Email would have made some impact if you make sure that your attribution is done in the right way. That brings me to one other area, which is when you're leveraging multi-channel or omni-channel, the core is this strategy, right? If you don't have the right strategy, you would be bombarding your subscribers with the same messaging and same communication across the different channels, right? Which is not the right way of doing it. So when we are talking about email strategy, right, the current challenge, and if I talk about majorly the email as a channel, the current challenge which the brand or the marketers are looking into is open rates are dying or stagnant, right? And there are multiple reasons, right? With updates towards the mailbox, let's say Apple's MPP or any bots, right, who are clicking and opening the emails, right? So brand or marketers are not able to rely on open rates, right? But still there are many brand owners or marketers who are still chasing for increasing the open rates and looking into it. Even though we all know open rates are now not 100% reliable. That could be one of the metrics, but that should not be your only metrics, right? Especially post iOS 15, right? So would love to understand, right, as you've been helping brands towards value-based measurement, for someone who is stuck at still open rates and click-through rates, what is the smarter measurement model to adopt now with the changing mailboxes and the advancements which are coming into the mailboxes?
Sure. I mean, I think it's worth understanding that open rates were never reliable. Like these were, this was never a solid metric, right? It was always a proxy for read rates, which is what inbox providers can see. Like they can genuinely see when their users look and read an email. They have all kinds of signals that we don't have. So open rates were always just a proxy for this other behavior. And there were a bunch of things that like inflated and deflated open rates. But open signals as like the highest frequency signal, even though they weren't the best, they were so high frequency that it was still useful. And I think that's still true today. You just have to look at auto opens versus verified opens. You definitely have to look at these in two buckets. But also you have to recognize that, that auto opens, like the whole point of auto opens is to obscure real opens, right? To obscure open activity by Apple's users. And so there are some real verifiable opens hiding in there, which is, again, the whole point. And so that is a useful data set because when you are getting an Apple Auto Open, it is a signal that that email is reaching the inbox. And so there's still a decent chance, not a huge chance, but there's a decent chance that some of those emails are being looked at. And so you have to treat those sort of separately. But to get back to your point, what should brands be focused on? And we do absolutely have a lot of our clients trying to look more broadly at engagement across channels. So, maybe they're only seeing auto opens from an email subscriber, but that email subscriber is also an SMS subscriber and they see activity there. Or they're not, but they know as a customer, they're still buying and converting and they see evidence that this is a very active customer, even if all we're seeing is auto opens from them, we're not seeing any clicks. Because they're such a good customer, we're gonna keep that person, even though we haven't seen any verifiable opens or clicks for a long period of time. And I think really honestly, even pre-MPP, a lot of programs made those kinds of distinctions. And I think MPP has just forced more brands to adopt that kind of holistic customer engagement mindset. And I think that's really wise to look at it more broadly like that. Also, we found like since MPP happened that clicks are roughly like 2 times more powerful than an open in terms of qualifying a subscriber as safe to mail. So there's a bunch of kind of math you need to do to kind of figure out, hey, what signals make sense, right? If someone has purchased in the last 3 months or 6 months, like, is that a good enough signal to like keep an email subscriber who appears to be inactive? What other signals are we looking at that might also qualify them? There's some calculated risks that you can take, and every brand kind of has to figure out their own secret formula based on their business and the behavior of their subscribers and customers. All right, but so going beyond it, so that's my spiel on why opens are still useful, and you need to look at sort of customer engagement, not just channel engagement. That's a smart thing to do. But I think the other thing that we should recognize that we're talking about opens, definitely opens, but also clicks, is that for most email marketing programs, neither of those things is the goal, right? Like so in my book, Email Marketing Rules, I talk about there being 4 different kinds of email marketing programs that have different goals. There are revenue-focused email marketing programs. These are retailers and other sort of B2C brands where they are selling directly. And so the whole focus of their program is to get people to buy various things. Revenue is the goal there. You should be looking at revenue, looking at profits, looking at average order size, those kinds of sort of basket-oriented metrics. And in those cases, opens and clicks, they're awesome signals that you should be using for personalization, segmentation, automation, all of those things. But it's really, those become sort of a channel health indicator more than like a KPI for the email marketing program. The same thing with lead-focused programs. These are a lot of B2B programs where you have prospects and you're nurturing them through and trying to get them to become, an SQL and trying to get them to become an opportunity, and then to eventually get them to convert after you hand them off to a salesperson. There your KPIs also are not opens nor clicks. Like it's much more about, time to close, using email to shorten that time to close, how efficiently are you converting, marketing qualified leads to sales qualified leads? Like it's metrics like that are central to a lead focused email marketing program, not opens and clicks. Those are secondary. Same thing with retention focused programs. That's our third kind. That's things like SaaS companies, but also like all the entertainment streamers. Anyone who you're signing on a sort of a subscription-based business. There again, goal is not opens and clicks. Those are health indicators, but really you should be judging the program on how well it retains customers, right? You want to be driving engagement with whatever the thing is that they're subscribed to. That's a goal of your email marketing program, with the ultimate goal of if you're doing that well, then people stay on and don't cancel their subscription. So those are the first three. The last one is engagement-focused email marketing programs. These are things like consumer packaged goods, brands that don't sell directly to consumers. They sell through outlets and retailers and other brands that sell for them. That's the only one of the four where opens and clicks are a true KPI of the email marketing program, because of the fact that they are not selling directly. Their engagement is the name of the game. And if they're driving strong engagement through their email marketing program and with their app and with their website, then there's the assumption being made that if you're seeing good engagement there, that's going to translate into sales through retailers and wholesalers and other folks. So that's the only one of the four where these metrics that we taught that we hold in such high esteem, opens and clicks, those are the only ones where it's a KPI. With the other three, which are most email marketing programs by a long shot, it's a secondary metric at best. So you always need to make sure that you are viewing things appropriately. I forget who it was, but somebody once said that we over-index on metrics that are easy to measure. And I think that is so true. Opens and clicks are just handed to us in our ESP reporting. It's right there for us. We don't have to do any work for it. It's really easy to get. And because it's so easy, we ascribe way too much value to it. Whereas the most valuable metrics are the ones that are harder to get, where you have to do some legwork and you have to do some integration and do some number crunching and do some modeling. Those are the much more valuable metrics. And connecting those dots, even if it's on a proxy basis, again, not being overly concerned with 100% accuracy. If you have a pretty good sense directionally of things, sometimes that's enough. So yes, I feel like open the clicks are great, but we as an industry put too much focus on those, and then we get surprised when our organization doesn't treat email marketing with more respect. We need to make sure we're talking the same language as the executives who care about these true KPIs. They don't care about these email marketing metrics so much.
So true. What you mentioned about making sure that open rates and click rates are just health check, right? Those are not the metrics you should consider. And we also recommend to our clients that we don't focus on open rates and click rates. Try to focus on the visits, which is you are generating from email or SMS, because visits is a one good metric where it shows that your clicks are actually getting converted to a website visit. Although the website visit is getting converted to the purchase or a lead or a form submission, that depends on CRO, right? The conversion rate optimization, because no matter how good your emails are, how good your CTAs are, if your web pages and the landing pages are not good enough, that's not in the control of the marketer, right? So yeah, that's what we normally try to recommend. But yeah, good insights on making sure that based on the type of program you are into, focus on either revenue or the engagement, right? Or the time duration of converting lead to MQL to SQL, right?
Yeah, and also recognizing that maybe different parts of your business may operate differently, right?
Yeah.
If you're, there's lots of B2B companies that, yes, they're trying to sell something big, and so those prospects are being treated like leads. And then once they get them on board, if it's some type of capital good, there's probably kind of a more of a retention model there where you want them to at the end of the life of that product buy a new one. But then there's also probably a part of their business that's focused on spare parts and servicing that probably operates more on like a revenue focused goal. So making sure you understand the different parts of your business that may actually have sort of different KPIs. So again, it gets a little complicated, but that's the way to accurately view these different functions that your email marketing program is performing.
Yep, rightly said, rightly said. Now, we also know that email often we treat it as a purely technical execution layer, right? And not as a strategic lever, right? Even in big companies, email is sometimes the last resort or stop in the campaign, right? Which they plan, and not the starting point, right? Which they try to leverage. But yeah, we have shown again and again when it's an integrated part of the overall campaign, right? Email drives loyalty, right? Growth, and even the brand trust. How do you recommend marketing leaders to elevate the role of email internally, and what data or proof points tend to finally shift the executive mindsets?
Yeah, so we talked about aligning metrics to the different goals of your business, and including the different, divisions or departments or, audience stages of your business. That is a critical way to make sure that you are aligning with executives. That's how you can show that you understand your business, you understand what you're trying to drive. I feel like email marketing gets in that sort of disrespected place when you don't do those two things, when you're not demonstrating that you understand what it is that you're actually trying to do, and you're talking way too much about, again, like opens and clicks and things like that, and even deliverability. Like, nobody really cares about that in the C-suite. They want you to take care of that, but that's like table stakes. They don't really care about that. So these are ways that you can demonstrate that you're aligned with the business by talking about, by acting as though you know what it is you're trying to drive, and then connecting all those dots and reporting your results in that way. That aligns you strategically with the company, and that's how you can get more respect and be treated better, for sure.
Yep, that's totally makes sense. One of the area which is definitely talk of the town right now is the artificial intelligence, AI, right? Be it a marketer, be it a market automation platform, everyone is talking about it, right? Either they are having features which are specific to leveraging AI, or there are marketers who are saying they are leveraging AI to plan their calendar, have those checks, do some audits, right? But AI is overhyped in some way, right? Whether we agree or not. But underused in other, right? Depending on how you take it. And there's a lot of noise about AI right now, right? Be it in the lifecycle marketing or overall, right? Be it into tech. And teams are either overwhelmed or not sure where to start or how to leverage it. And you've spoken, you've presented it multiple times that where AI actually delivers and results in email. So if there is a brand marketer or an email marketer, right, who is reviewing and listening to this conversation and session, what should brands focus their energy if they want to use AI to improve the performance of their email channel or overall marketing channel without getting lost into the complexity, right, or the structure of the AI?
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely AI is the talk of the town. Everybody is consumed with it. And I think a lot of brands are worried, as you said, oh, are we falling behind? Are we doing this right? Are we keeping up? I think one of the things that I find unfortunate is that there seems to be a lot of throwing around AI as a term and using that sometimes as a shorthand for generative AI. And I see that folks will say how great generative AI is, and they'll give some generative AI examples, but then they'll also give some machine learning examples mixed in there with the generative AI. And those are really wildly different animals. These are animals that don't belong in the same zoo. And it's important to recognize that machine learning algorithms have been around for about a decade now, like in the email marketing space. There's great product and content recommendation engines powered by machine learning that, based on prior engagement, serve up products and content that are more likely to be of interest to an individual subscriber. Those are fantastic. If you have a lot of SKUs or a lot of content, those are great. They're hard to spin up. They require a lot of legwork and tagging and stuff to get those to work well, but absolutely worth your time and energy. Send time optimization is another machine learning tool that's been around for a long time and is really good. MPP is sort of nerfed it a little bit, made it a little bit less useful, but still way better, even in the MPP era, than just sending out at a generic time. And that is a tool that is super, super easy to implement. Most of the time, it's just flipping a switch. It starts collecting data, and then it starts fine-tuning those delivery times. That's like, you talk about easy wins. Send time optimization is an easy win, so long as you're not a high frequency sender. If you're sending more than once a day, then it's probably not going to work for you in any meaningful way. But if you're sending, once a day or less frequently, send time optimization is really amazing, and you should look at it because it's super, super easy. So let's recognize that we have tools like that have been around and proven themselves, and they are very, very different from generative AI. These machine learning tools essentially do things that are kind of like time prohibitive for humans to do. Like, there's nobody whose job it is to calculate individual optimized send times, right? There's nobody sitting around doing that, and then they're like being replaced by a machine learning algorithm that does that. So that's not really happening. Generative AI is very, very different. That is doing things that mostly people are doing today. And I sort of throw that generative AI into sort of three different buckets. We look at it for copywriting, for image generation, and for coding. Coding is the one that's sort of least farthest along in the email marketing space. Some really amazing coding work done with code languages that actually have standards. So HTML, and we use Apex here at Oracle, and we have a tool that, like, I think accelerates our code generation process by like 10 or 20%, or maybe even a bit more. So that's really great. But email marketing, we don't have any HTML or CSS standards. And so I think it's going to take us a little while to develop something that actually works and adheres to the best practices of today. So that's the one that's least furthest along. I think the second least furthest along is image generation. Certainly at the enterprise level, it's not very helpful for sort of wholesale image generation. Normally, brand standards and requirements make that really tough. But some of our designers use it to create textures and doing other like smaller bits, upscaling images. Generative AI is good for that. So you just kind of use it appropriately. Now, certainly at the a lot of smaller businesses are using it more aggressively, but at the enterprise level, not super used. Gen AI for copy is probably the most established in all the surveys I've seen. That's the one that has like the most usage, that particular category. And there, I think the uses are pretty vast, right? You can use it for all kinds of ideation. You can use it for, taking a crack at like drafting something. You can, feed it a draft that you've created and have it change the tone, change the audience, change the industry. You can have it, it's great, especially when you want to send out different segmented messages based on industry or based on different kinds of customers. It can give you like a good step in that direction. And so those are all useful ways. I think in 5 years, every major brand will have a Gen AI tool that enforces brand standards, brand voice, isn't going to allow you to say certain words, isn't going to allow you to write at a grade level that's higher than a certain amount. Really like making sure that there's great consistency across all of the different copy that you create across channels. I think every brand's going to have something like that in 5 years. Again, especially at like the enterprise level. And I know I've talked about like at the enterprise level a lot. Those are the clients that we have at the sort of small business side of the spectrum. Definitely much more usage. I think I saw just this morning a survey from eMarketer that essentially 50% of marketers were using Gen AI for copy editing, for images, and that's great and not surprising to me. That is absolutely like not what's happening in the enterprise market right now. But we're really early days. I think that's the other thing that really messes people up is everyone thinks that they're already way far behind. This is just a very fast moving, but I would say ultimately like pretty immature technology at this point. There's really a lot of things that need to happen for this to become way more useful and reach its full potential. So I'll talk about a couple of different things. So one thing is, and I talked about the difference between machine learning and generative AI, just to lay into that a little bit more, machine learning is all about getting greater performance. It's about having emails arrive at a time when they're more likely to be engaged with, so boosting engagement. They're about recommending products and content that's more likely to get engaged. And the measurement there, like the winning statistics, they're all about performance. It's not about saving time, because again, most of those tasks are time prohibitive. Generative AI is mostly about saving time, but I think going forward, there's going to be a slow merger of these two things. So like we talked today about having, Gen AI write copy. Well, wouldn't it be so much better if these engines knew something about our audience and what they respond to, what they don't respond to? That's going to happen over time. You're going to see a lot more Gen AI functionality merging into applications, sitting right next to where there is, email marketer data, digital marketing data, and to understand what's going on performance-wise. So it doesn't just make probabilistic recommendations based on it's the vastness of all of its learning material, but actually makes recommendations based also on your particular brand, your particular audience, and past performance. That's going to be really fascinating as these two things come together. That's going to be great. And the other benefit there is that at that point, when these tools are inside of apps, they're going to be private, they're going to be protected. And that's certainly a huge thing that a lot of our clients talk about, is wanting to make sure that their marketing plans don't get out into the ether for anybody else to pick up or learn from. They want to make sure that everything stays private, which I know is possible with obviously standalone tools like ChatGPT. You can get it so that it's private, but for a lot of enterprises, having it be inside of their application, inside the firewall, that's where they want it. And so that's going to be a really fascinating evolution. The other thing that is really just even started, right? We're just starting to get our feet on Gen AI, and now there's agentic AI. And I think that that's going to be also super, super fascinating. Here at Oracle, we very recently released our AI agent studio, and recently we had like a little bit of an internal competition where we had different teams create different agents, and within 2 weeks, our teams created over 300 different agents doing all kinds of different things. I think the sky is really the limit for these kinds of things, and having agents doing very discrete small tasks, I think is great. It limits risk, right? These agents aren't doing far-flung things. They're doing you're giving them very narrow parameters to operate on, but they're doing things that save time and make things easier. But I firmly believe that that's what the future is going to look like, where you have lots of little agents doing lots of little things, working together and checking each other sometimes. But that's going to be a fascinating sort of next step in sort of the AI evolution. that's just starting. So I think things are going to look sort of wildly different in 5 years' time. But if you're worried about like, you think you're falling behind, you should definitely do, some testing, get familiar with some of these tools. But I wouldn't say that anybody is like tragically behind at this point. But certainly that scenario is definitely changing as things continue to evolve.
Yep. No, great to hear that AI is evolving from generative AI to agentic. And yeah, we also leverage tools on copy, image generation to an extent, because with enterprise brands, the challenge is of a copyright, right? So they normally are not open to having image generation. But yeah, we try to leverage it for copy majorly, and trying to see if there is any inbuilt features, the way the marketing automation platform are coming up with some features around AI, right? Which they are providing into the platform. Leveraging it makes it easier for the marketer, and we are also challenging that scenario where when we have an agentic marketer, how or what would be the need of a marketer versus a strategist, right? Where agentic agents are going to do everything, right? While the marketers who are doing currently in terms of setting up the campaigns, canvas, drafting those copy, right? All those stuff. There is a possibility that with these tools and platforms evolving, the agentic marketing would take over that place. But yeah, it's a different discussion. But yeah.
Yes, I don't think we have enough time to get into all of that, but yeah, that's going to be fascinating. And you mentioned the legal issues. I mean, this is another sign of just how young, this technology is. That a lot of these legal issues, and I think definitely on like the image generation side of things, that has absolutely been something that our clients have expressed a lot of concern about, because enterprises, like the deep-pocketed businesses, they're the ones who are most likely to get sued for sure. And so they're very risk adverse. And image generation is one of those areas where they see quite a bit of risk. But Disney is now in the game. They're they're suing Midjourney, and I don't know. I don't want to bet against Disney. That seems like a bad bet, but I think we're probably going to get some clarity in the not too distant future on how things are really going to work. But again, just another sign. This is like a really young technology that can do amazing things, but there's still a lot of things that have not been worked out.
Yep. No, that's really great call out. And yeah, let's see what happens to Disney versus Midjourney, right? And where that brings. But yeah, enterprises are always being cautious about leveraging generative AI, because they always want to make sure that they are not on the other side of the part, right, where they need to get pay a heavy fine, right, depending on what the result or the outcome is. But thanks, Chad, for giving us a super insights, right, be it around the deliverability, be it around the data part, which is a major concern. Even though you have a greatest design in the world, greatest subject line in the world, if your data is not correct, right, it is not going to give you the outcome or the result. Talking about how to make sure that your low engagement scenarios, right, what would be the core reason, be it a data, be it a design, be it a subject line, right, and also walking us through the journey orchestration, right, where we can convert the static drips to something which is more responsive, more dynamic, right, which the brands can leverage, especially for the B2B side, right. And the core insights or the key part of this session was the email metrics, how we can move out of that email open and click through rate as a standard metrics, and start to think, depending on the program we are into, right, whether to consider revenue, whether to consider the time to conversion, whether to consider the website visits, or focusing on around generating the leads, right, through form submission. But yeah, super insights and super helpful, and I'm sure everyone who is going to review this session, right, is able to get insights and would be able to make it adapt it into their email marketing programs moving forward.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for the time, Chad, and it was great having you in this Marketing Insider series with Mavlers.
My pleasure.